Karen, do you have any thoughts on the recent Como administration handing out $850 million to a multitude of different types of companies to, in the hopes of generating jobs or stimulating the economy? Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I've read the entire 94-page document. In fact, it's sitting at my house right now on the counter. I think it's actually a cousin or a twin to the Obama's failed national stimulus program. So what we did was we took the program that didn't work at the national level, and the New York State ended up duplicating it at the state level and expected it to work. So yes, they just sent out what was it, just shy of $1 billion.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is the amount of monies that were apportioned in that document toward private industry. Toward housing. If you take a look at how those monies were broken up, the North Country received a chunk of change. It was all, you know, divided based on area, but there's a lot of common threads through that document. And you're going to see that there are actually competing structures within the state of New York that are now competing against each other to gain those monies. I asked our superintendent what would happen if some of the money that came to the North Country actually went to the school. And his response was, my God, I wouldn't have to raise school taxes. You know, we're looking at a pretty significant increase in school taxes and less monies, and so I believe that that grant process is just a duplication of the Obama plan, and I don't know that it's going to yield that many jobs. But
you understand the theory on what makes him think it's going to create jobs? How is that? How is he saying that?
Well, if you look at the actual document, it's very interesting because much of the money, well, I shouldn't say much, I don't know the exact breakdown, but there are a lot of dollars that are going to private industry for expansion and growth. So I think what they believe will happen is that if you give private industry that money, which I think in the past private industry would have sought a loan in order to expand, but now what they're doing is they're going to the government so to get that grant process. So I think they think that that's what's going to generate jobs. But if you look at the actual plan, a lot of the jobs that are generated are jobs that are required to be held by certain individuals. So now what you have is you have our taxes going into a pot, and then a group of people deciding where that tax money, who gets that tax money, and then on top of that, whatever jobs are created are going to go to certain individuals. It's stated right in those grants that a huge chunk of those jobs that are created are going to go to low to moderate income people. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, now we're going to use that as a qualifier for somebody to get a job instead of actually giving jobs to the people who are best qualified for the job. So you have that piece in there too. If you take a look historically at some of the programs that were done through the Housing Administration, especially down on Long Island, they had a $26 million building that was renovated down there. It was an old hospital. And this is kind of the crux of what they're doing with some of the grant money this year too. And if you look at that program, it yielded 12 jobs. $26 million got 12 jobs. So I don't know where that whole idea set is coming from. But if you look at the grants, one of the grants was for, and I mentioned it in my speech, $180,000 for a chicken plucker truck. Now you can't make that up, okay? So let me explain what the chicken plucker truck is going to do, okay? It's $180,000 being given to two people. In St. Lawrence County, actually, and they got a Ford F-350 to pull the chicken plucker truck, which was the $130,000, and then there was money for the Ford F-350. And then what they do is they transport that vehicle to different farms, and they actually will help to, you know, kill the chickens and remove the feathers and whatnot. But you have to have 100 chickens in order for them to show up at your place, which limits drastically the number of farms that will use it. And then you have to pay $4 a chicken versus $1, $1.25 a chicken, which is what will happen if you take your own chickens up the road. But our tax dollars gave that little two-person company $180,000 for a chicken plucker truck. That's just one example in that grant of those types of things.
Who owns the chicken plucker? How did they decide to give the money to them?
Okay, well, you had to apply for the grants. And they won the grant.
I didn't know there was such a thing I could apply for. How did you even find out?
It's probably because we don't have chicken plucker trucks, but the Excelsior program is kind of tapped into that also, into the whole grant process. So there's a lot of money in that particular bill, in that funding, excuse me, that's set aside for people to go through round 2 of the grant process. So that's also in there.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with a company that's relocating to Albany to create 18 new jobs, as it leaves Chemung County and loses 18 jobs. And they've got money to generate jobs, and it's a zero gain. But they got our tax money to make the move and to buy new equipment with zero job creation.
Well, you're experiencing a lot of problems where you live right now because of the fracking problem and all of the jobs leaving and going over to Pennsylvania from in the border of where you live, so,
Smoke and mirrors.
right.
And I think that the prime example for the chicken plucker truck came from our Green Mountains to the east. And their chicken plucker truck has failed totally. They're selling it. And it was a complete farce, similar dollar amount.
Mm-hmm.
And it has failed miserably.
Karen, you mentioned hydrofracking. You fully support it. Do you think the state's dragging its heels and coming up with regulations to lift the ban?
Absolutely, and I think the not in my backyard people are also doing a huge disservice to those areas because people are losing jobs. They're having to flee to the state of Pennsylvania, which is actually doing very well. You know, their economy is growing. They have help wanted signs in their windows, and the people in the southern portion of our state in that tier are all losing jobs. I mean, that economies are shriveling up as a result of that, so it's a huge lost opportunity for the state of New York, absolutely. Not to mention revenue gained, so jobs and revenue.
And Adirondack Club and Resort, fully supported?
Um,
Adirondack Club and Resort?
Oh, absolutely. And that was a fiasco of an 8-year drag on a variety of levels, you know, but it should not have taken 8 years to be able to get that license through, to be able to start that. And the APA really has such a stronghold in this area over our jobs, our economy. The bureaucracy associated with that is almost unconscionable in this state of the economy when we really need jobs and we have people who want to provide them. So yes, and not to mention the ATV laws and what's happening there. So, you know, I think the APA affects us on a variety of levels, absolutely. Any other questions?
Do you have or are you seeking Tea Party support?
Do I have? The Tea Party will only endorse candidates our local Tea Party will only endorse candidates at the congressional and up level. So, no. But I am still currently a member of Upstate New York Tea Party, UN Community.
Campaigns are expensive.
Yes, they are.
How are you going to fund yours?
Right here.
Right here.
Well, here's what I'm thinking, Joe. That's a really good question. I'm thinking that there are 130,000 people, residents in this particular, well, in all districts, in this district. My job right now is just going to be to listen, to go and to listen and pull together the local leaders, not necessarily government leaders, but people who would normally be left out of the decision-making process and the information process. And then sit down and talk with those people, craft and generate some sort of a message. And while we're doing that, we're going to do some fundraising events at the same time. So I think you should stay tuned to see what happens. And then there's Sean.
Suppose you want to contribute.
Suppose you want to contribute?
Suppose we want to contribute to your campaign, other than John.
Other than Sean? Well, you can talk to Jackie right here afterwards, because she'll be helping us with funding. But
Friends of Karen.
Friends of Karen. A committee to elect Karen Bisso. Oh, Monica! This is one of my students. Thank you. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. And please join us at Miron's for